Hi everyone, welcome to Lesson 31. My name is Danielle and it's great to be back. You may have joined in with our previous lessons where we've been doing lots of fantastic work with number. How did you go with your home task from Lesson 30? I'd like to share what I did. Let's remember together, in Lesson 30, we were adding and subtracting using a 100s chart. What I did was I made a numeral using 2 digits. Then I rolled a dice and I would add or subtract using my 100s chart. What I did first, I made the numeral 43, 4 and 3. Then I rolled a dice. I rolled a 3 and I was adding. 43, add 3, let's check. 43, add 3, 1, 2, 3 is 46. Next, I made the numeral 75, 7 and a 5. Then I rolled a 4. This time I was subtracting. 75, subtract 4. Let's find 75. And when we subtract, remember we were counting backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 75 subtract 4 is 71. Great work, everyone. So now we're going to move on and we're going to do a little bit of work with measurement. Now, when we are measuring, we still need our knowledge of number to help us. Today, our learning intention is to explore where we use measurement and what we can measure. Where in our world do we need to measure? Let's stop and think together. What I want you to do is write or draw where you have heard the word measure. For example, I have had to get my foot measured when I was at the shops buying new shoes. So I would draw a picture of my shoe like this. And I might even write buying new shoes because that's where I've used measurement. I want you to pause the video now and write or draw where you have used or heard the word measurement. Great job. This is what I've come up with. When I'm measuring how tall I am at home, so I would draw, here's a picture of me. And I'm measuring how tall I am. Now, when we're thinking like mathematicians, we don't have to spend so long on our pictures because we're not thinking like artists. I also have used measurement when I've kicked a ball. I've wanted to see how far it went. So I'm going to draw a ball. I've also had to measure when I was looking at the temperature of my oven when I was about to put a cake in. So I'm going to draw an oven. Did you have any of those on your list? Measurement is more than big and small. We can measure objects like a book. We could also measure spaces, like how far it is from home to a park. Or we could measure events, like watching a favourite TV show or brushing your teeth. I have some pictures of different objects or spaces or events, and we're going to talk about what we could measure in these pictures. Here we go. Here is a picture of a freezer. Have a think. What could we measure? That's right. Perhaps we could measure how cold it is. Or we could measure how wide it is. or even how much it would hold. Let's try another. Here we have some pencils. Stop and think, what could we measure? That's right. Perhaps we could measure how long they are. Or we could measure the thickness of the lead. Let's do another. Here we have an iPad. What could you measure with an iPad? That's right. Perhaps you might be measuring how much battery is left. Or you might be measuring how much time you've spent on the iPad. We could also measure how tall it is or how wide. I've got another card here. A lovely cup of tea. What could we measure here? Yes, we could measure the temperature. We could see how hot it is. Now remember, if you were doing this at home, you would not touch a hot cup of tea. We could measure how deep the cup is or how tall. Okay, this one is a picture of a kettle. What could I measure here? That's right, I could measure how long the kettle takes to boil. I could measure the temperature. I could measure how tall or wide the kettle is. Once again, remember not to touch a hot kettle. This is our last picture. Here we have a bag of apples. What could you measure here? Yes, perhaps you could measure how heavy the bag is. Great work, everyone. These are some attributes of what we could measure. So we can look at how heavy something is, which is the mass, how cold or hot something is with the temperature. We can measure the time, where it's how long something takes. We can also measure the capacity of things, which is how much something could hold. We can also measure the length of objects, which is how long or tall something is. In the next few lessons, we're going to focus on just two attributes, length and capacity. Now, we're going to do a little bit of sorting now. So I have the word length here and capacity. Now, I also have some pictures here, and you're going to help me work out if this child would be looking at the length or the capacity. Are you ready? So here we have a picture of a boy pouring a glass of orange juice. What do you think? Length or capacity? That's right. He could be looking at capacity, how much the glass could hold. Let's put it here. Oh, here we've got some children measuring the length. Let's put it in length. Okay, so in this picture, we can see the child is pouring from a smaller cup into a larger cup. What do you think? Yes, looking at the capacity. Let's put that here. Oh, now we've got a whole number of different containers here. That's definitely capacity. Now, these children are wrapping presents. Have you done that before? When we are wrapping presents, it's important to know how long an object is so that you can get the right amount of paper. Let's put that in length. Beading. Who enjoys doing beading? When we are beading, we're often making jewellery or things like that. So it's important to know how long the string needs to be. Let's put that in, that's right, length. Ah, these children look like they're making ice blocks. Now they're pouring from one container into another. That's definitely capacity. Let's put that here. Okay, now these children here are doing a really long jump. They're trying to jump all the way over this puddle. What do you think that is? I think so too. Length. Oh, who likes building with Duplo? This child here is concentrating really hard on building a tall tower. I think that's length. Ah, this is what we spoke about earlier, getting new shoes. This picture belongs in length too. Thanks for helping me sort those pictures, everyone. Your home task is to find 5 things you could measure and record what you could measure. Remember, mathematicians call this the attribute. For example, if I chose my drink bottle, I would draw a picture. So here is my drink bottle. Now, let's think about what we could measure here. What attributes? We could measure how much it holds, its capacity. We could measure how tall it is, or we could measure how wide it is. So that's what you're going to do. Today we have learnt that we can measure more than just how big something is. We know that there are many different kinds of big. We discovered that we can measure how cold something is. We can measure its capacity or how much something holds. We can measure time or how long something goes for. We can measure the mass or how heavy something is. We can measure the length of an object, space, or event. We call the different things we can measure about an object, space, or event the attributes. We can usually use numbers to quantify its measurement. Thanks for joining me today. Enjoy exploring measurement at home, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.